They say healing doesn't always come with fireworks or grand revelations. Sometimes, it arrives like dawn, quiet, gradual, and almost unnoticed until the light touches everything. You wake one morning and realize that something has shifted. The old thoughts that used to weigh you down don't hold the same power anymore. The places that once felt like home now feel too small. The conversations that once fed your ego now drain your energy. It's not that you've become colder. It's that you've begun to understand warmth differently. You've started to recognize the difference between comfort and growth. And that recognition, soft, unglamorous, and deeply human, is where the story of outgrowing your old self begins. 1. The silence that no longer feels empty once. Silence used to terrify you. It felt like a void waiting to swallow you whole. A reminder of loneliness, rejection, or being left out. So you filled it. You filled it with noise, with constant scrolling, with people who never truly listened, with a schedule so full it left no room for your own breath. But lately, something's changed. You catch yourself sitting in stillness and realize it doesn't hurt the same way. The quiet no longer screams. It is soothing. Psychology calls this distress tolerance, the ability to sit with discomfort without needing to escape it. It's what happens when your nervous system learns safety again. When you no longer interpret calm as danger. This shift might seem subtle, but it's revolutionary. It's your mind whispering, "You can rest now. The world won't fall apart if you pause." That's growth. 2. The conversations that drain you. There was a time when you would stay in rooms where you had to shrink to fit. You'd laugh at jokes that made you uncomfortable, nod along to opinions that contradicted your values, or overextend yourself to prove you belonged. The human brain is wired for connection. Our survival once depended on it. But somewhere along the line, belonging began to feel like begging. You confused acceptance with approval. Now, something in you hesitates. You feel a quiet resistance when people gossip, complain, or manipulate your empathy. You start leaving those rooms earlier, or not entering them at all. That's not coldness. That's emotional boundaries. It's your mirror neurons finally resting, no longer mimicking every emotion in sight. You're learning that peace doesn't require permission. You're realizing that solitude, when chosen, isn't loneliness. It's self-respect in disguise. 3. The ache of no longer fitting in. Outgrowing your old self often comes with grief. You might find yourself revisiting friendships, habits, or dreams that once defined you, and feeling the ache of distance. It's confusing, isn't it? To love something that no longer feels right. To remember joy in places that now bring you heaviness. But that grief isn't regression. It's integration. Your brain, especially the limbic system, is wired to resist change. Familiarity equals safety. Even when it hurts. That's why healing sometimes feels like heartbreak. You're not rejecting your past. You're thanking it for getting you this far. Think of it like shedding skin. The old layer isn't bad. It just outlived its purpose. Every goodbye to an outdated version of yourself is a hello to alignment. And alignment, though unfamiliar, is where authenticity begins. 4. The triggers that teach instead of terrify. You used to see triggers as proof that you were broken, moments when a smell, a tone, or a memory pulled you back into old pain. But now, you're beginning to notice something else. Awareness. The pause before reaction. The breath before the storm. That's your prefrontal cortex, your brain's seat of rational thought. Stepping in to reframe the story. Emotional triggers are like alarms, not enemies. They don't mean you've failed at healing. They mean your mind is still protecting you. The key is learning to listen instead of fight. What is this reaction trying to tell me? You ask. Maybe it's asking for safety, closure, or compassion. Growth isn't about never being triggered. It's about learning to respond with curiosity, not shame. When you can meet your pain with understanding instead of judgment, you're not just healing, you're evolving. 5. The need for solitude that feels sacred. Remember when being alone felt like punishment? Now it feels like coming home. You find peace in small rituals, the morning light spilling across your room, the slow rhythm of making tea, the quiet hum of your thoughts. You no longer need constant distraction to feel alive. That's not isolation. That's self-regulation. Your brain is learning to generate dopamine, those gentle waves of satisfaction, from internal experiences instead of external chaos. The reward system, once fueled by validation, is recalibrating toward inner harmony. This is what mindfulness really looks like outside of therapy rooms and wellness trends. It's the art of being with yourself without needing to escape. You realize that solitude isn't the absence of company. It's the presence of self. And in that space, you find something you once thought you'd lost: contentment. 6. The compassion you offer to your past self-healing often begins the moment you stop being cruel to the person you used to be. For years, you might have carried shame like armor, ashamed of how naive, reactive, or dependent you once were. But one night, when you're lying awake, replaying memories you wish you could edit, you feel something soften. You imagine your younger self, not as a failure, but as someone trying their best with what they knew. Neuroscience shows that self-compassion activates the same brain regions linked to safety and belonging. When you forgive your past, you send your nervous system a powerful message: we are safe now. The self-criticism that once drove your ambition begins to lose its edge. You no longer need to prove your worth through perfection. You begin to see your mistakes as teachers, not life sentences. The moment you extend grace to who you were, you create space for who you're becoming. 7. The gentle excitement for what's next. There's a calm kind of joy that comes when you realize you no longer crave chaos. You no longer romanticize intensity or chase people who make you feel small. Instead, you feel drawn to peace. Not the performative kind, but the quiet, steady kind that comes from inner alignment. This is what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the positive psychological change that arises from struggle. Your mind, once consumed by survival, begins to imagine again. You catch yourself dreaming, not of escape, but of expansion. You start planting seeds in your life instead of fires. You start building instead of running. You start noticing beauty again. In mundane things, in simple mornings, in the way light filters through your curtains. That's not just optimism. That's your brain relearning joy after years of defense. That's neuroplasticity in action, the brain's ability to rewire itself toward hope. And yet, even as you grow, you may still have days where the old patterns whisper. You might still crave validation, still feel the tug of nostalgia, still question if you're really changing. That's okay. Growth isn't linear. It's cyclical. You'll revisit lessons you thought you mastered, but each time you'll return with deeper understanding. Like rereading a favorite book and realizing it speaks differently to the person you've become. Outgrowing your old self is not a rejection. It's an evolution. It's remembering that even the versions of you that stumbled, begged, overgave, and hid were chapters of survival. They were bridges. And bridges aren't meant to be homes. They're meant to take you somewhere new. If you listen closely, you'll notice that your inner dialogue is softer now. The tone of your thoughts has shifted from accusation to inquiry. You no longer ask, "What's wrong with me?" but "What am I learning from this?" That subtle change rewrites everything. Your old self wasn't a mistake. It was a messenger. It taught you what exhaustion feels like so you could recognize peace. It showed you what unhealed love looks like, so you could crave something healthier. It forced you to confront pain, so you could become intimate with resilience. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of growth. It doesn't erase who you were. It honors it. It takes all the fragments, the confusion, the mistakes, and says, "Thank you for surviving so that I could arrive here." Because here, you finally understand that healing isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering yourself. Remembering that beneath the noise, the fear, the roles and expectations, there has always been you that was whole. A you that knew peace before the world taught you chaos. Now, when you walk into new spaces, you carry that quiet knowing with you. You no longer need to perform for belonging. You no longer chase people who can't meet you halfway. You no longer fear starting over, because you've done the hardest thing already. You've faced yourself. And on the days when you doubt, when growth feels too slow, or the old you feel too close, just remember, evolution isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. A gentle oscillation between shedding and blooming, between remembering and rediscovering, between whom you were and who you are still becoming. So when your old self knocks on the door, don't shut it out. Welcome it. Offer it tea. Thank it for getting you this far. And then with grace, let it rest. Because the truth is, you're not losing yourself. You're meeting yourself again. The self that's no longer powered by fear but by peace. No longer driven by proving but by purpose. And that, quietly and profoundly, is how you know you're finally outgrowing your old self.